Hey, well, it's you again, Josh, right?
It is me again.
More
And
Right on.
Josh.
more of me. Let's see. We've got this De La Soul. De La Soul is Dead. Released May 13th, 1991. In the opening montage, you heard Roller Skating Jam, Saturday Night, and now you're going to hear Keeping the Faith.
Knock a boost till she's 14K. Diamond in the back, sunroof top. Waiting for the credit card to sweep, going shop. Jack plays the back, just knock another sock. Cause now in the hoodie. Good one ring came, Jody blew a spark. Found about Judy round the corner in the park. Flipping like a dipstick, hip to the new. Practicing the rain, mellow in the blue. Jack rolled the carpet and swift like a skate. Yo, Jody, yo, I gotta go, I got a date.
All right, Matt, what's the stats on this album?
Yeah, so the stats on De La Soul is Dead. It comes in at number 545 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 46 in 1991, number 3075 of all time. It's De La Soul's second highest rated album behind 1989's 3 Feet High and Rising, which is a record we've covered already. It did make Rolling Stone's list, coming in at number 228. And De La Soul is ranked number 391 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
And before we get going, Josh, I have to ask if you stumbled across something. That cover of the
Yes.
dead flower has to be a troll of the fact that they were called like Flower Child Hip Hop, wasn't it?
It's exactly right. Yep.
Okay,
It's-
gotcha.
it's,
I had never noticed that when I had seen that album before. I looked at it,
Yep.
I'm like, oh wow, okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
it refers to the
Oh,
death
I
of
didn't-
the Daisy Age, which
Yes,
was a song
yes.
in the kind of their aesthetic in the first album.
I had never, all the times of knowing De La Soul and doing stuff, I'd never done that, and then I looked at that, I'm like, oh shit, okay. So yeah.
Yep. So we did cover their debut album, 3 Feet High and Rising, last season on season 3, episode 31. So check that out for more bio and other things like why it took so long for their albums to come out on streaming. De La Soul's 3 members, Kelvin Mercer, aka Posthumous, aka Plug One, David Trugoy the Dove, aka Plug Two, and DJ Vincent Maceo, aka Maceo, aka Plug Three, Pacemaster Mace, and a million other names. This album was produced by Prince Paul, who did their first album and their next album after this. They are also the part of the Native Tongues Collective, which includes Tribe Called Quest and other groups. They are from Long Island, New York, and met at Amityville High School. And while there, they also met Prince Paul, aka Paul Houston. They have 8 studio albums, with their most recent being in 2016, and this is their second album. They are firmly alternative rap or rap. They are influenced by Parliament, Funkadelic, Africa Bambaataa, Eric B. and Rakim, Public Enemy, James Brown, other artists. Similar artists: Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers, Diggable Planets, Del the Funky Homo Sapien, Boogie Down Productions, followed by Black Alicious, Jurassic 5, Black Star, Common, DJ Shadow, The Roots. And Me, Myself, and I is their highest charting Billboard single at 34. And their 2000 album, Artificial Intelligence Mosaic Thump, reached number 9 on the Billboard 200 charts. This is a departure from their last album. As John pointed out, the album cover indicates that departure. The tone is darker, the humor is darker. There's some weightier topics discussed. That was
Sure is.
That was all intentional. They wanted to show that they weren't just kind of these hippie, weird, rap guys. Maceo stated that the group's goal was, quote, breaking the stereotype and the stigmatism that put us in the hippie concept when Daisy Age was just an acronym for To Inner Sound. Prince Paul said, quote, we were trying to prove we weren't just a one-album act, and that there was a lot of disillusionment with the music industry. When I listen to it now, the rap sounds shall we say, bitter, unquote.
I agree, yeah, for sure.
It was a highly anticipated album upon release, but the change in tone divided critics, and it's much more highly thought of now retrospectively and more recently. So another long album from De La Soul with a lot going on. Let's start with Matt this time. What'd you think of their second album?
First of all, I'm just pulling this up on Wikipedia here. Tom Waits was the co-writer of Oodles of O's. And Serge Gainsbourg has writing credits in some of these.
Well, they
as
probably did that because
the
of
samples, but
yeah.
they're but it's usually you just see it's sampled by, but that maybe they're starting to Maybe this is just kind of what we're seeing with legal.
Retroactively.
Yeah, that this is what's happening now. It's like, okay, if you're going to sample, you have to give the writing credits, which we didn't really see.
Yeah.
At least they're not listed like this in previous hip hop records. But man, this is a good album. So De La Soul. This is kind of like, along the lines of like the Tribe Called Quest, and Gangstar. I think this is certainly. The sound of these kinds of rap albums are really appealing to me. I love the production. I love the sampling that's done. It still seems like there's some good mix of like, it seems like 70s and 60s and of samples that are lo-fi. It's got this muted beat production. This kind of almost. Some of these, it's almost like they're produced to make it sound like a record's playing. It's like there's that fuzziness of like a record playing in the along with it, or it's kind of like this permeating kind of sound in the background, which just I don't know. I like that. I like that vibe. It's not a clean production style. And
like more
it's
organic or something, or
it just seems, and it just yes, I think probably more organic, and I like the muted style. I like kind of like it's not as clear, that the sounds aren't as crisp and clear, and I think that adds a layer to the beats that are happening, and it sounds cool. Like this is a very cool sounding record. It is long. There are 27 tracks on it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you've got several skits in here, which I skit 1, skit 2, all the way through skit 5. It's basically the most I can get out of it. Guys listening to the album, and one's like just keeps smacking one of the other guys because he's talking about how much he likes it and the other guy hates it. So I don't know. I mean, those are kind of throwaway for me. I know that becomes like a staple thing, with hip hop. The skits didn't really do a whole lot for me for this record, but the music certainly did. I think that, Oodles of O's is a great, there's a lot of songs on here that just make you, that just stick in my head after hearing it, like Please Porridge is a very catchy, kind of song there.
Got in my head.
Yeah, I mean, Roller Skating Jam Named Saturdays was awesome. I love that it's got like that beginning intro is like a disco kind of thing, and then it goes more into the hip hop lounge type of sound. And then Biddies in the BK Lounge is a real interesting song. It's like that's like a prog rock hip hop song because there's like 4 different parts that are just kind of back to back to back, right?
Yeah.
These little segments, and it's kind of funny. That's part diss track where the guy's like going back and forth with a woman in Burger King, and they're dissing each other and stuff because she's mad at him because he's not taking her order, and then they just start dissing each other. So, but there's literally like 4 different parts of that song, and it's kind of weird that it's all in one track. But my great beats. My brother's a bass head. Love the beat behind that. And then it's kind of more jams, like dance stuff. Like Kicked Out the House is kind of like a house almost dance track kind of thing. So a lot of variety on here. It definitely seems like a more of a. I don't want to say it's more focused, but it's more mature maybe than their last record. And it definitely seems like and I didn't pick up on the death of the flower, kind of thing, but it does make sense with what's happening here because it seems like it's going in a little bit more. I don't know if darker is the right way to put it, but there's an undertone here that's maybe a little bit more layered perhaps than the previous record. Not necessarily better, but I don't know which one I like better, but
it's definitely dark.
I'll jump on.
Okay. All
It's
right.
it's super cynical. Can I jump in? Like the
go.
number one thing that jumped out about this album more than anything is that I'm like, boy, they had something to say on this album. And before I even saw the cover, like I listened to this album, I'm like, man, from the begin, like from Oodles of O's to, like there's all kinds of, my brother's a bass head, Biddies in the BK Lounge, Afro Connections at a Hi-Fi, Millie pulled a pistol on Santa. There's all these songs lyrically. You're like, man, they are not happy about something. And you always hear that this is the dark De La Soul album and stuff, but I think it's been a while since I listened to it, and I'm like, man, especially after you listen to the first album and then this, even their choice of samples and stuff is if you look at the original source material, it's much darker source material than it was. And so then when it was there and then the thing popped up, I just started laughing because a dead daisy flower pot. It's like, well, that certainly tells you all you need to know right there, along with the name De La Soul is dead. So yes, there's a lot of the things that I know is appealing to all of us in terms of sample selections. The production is all great, but my lasting takeaway from this album was less the the production and stuff like that, because we talked about it extensively, like why we like it in our review of 3 Feet High, 3 Feet High and Rising. But this, to me, the takeaway was, as I was looking at this, I was like, it is clearly they did not like how they were categorized. I don't think they liked being called flower children or like nerd hip hop or stuff like. And a lot of
Yeah.
it, this is more violent. It's more aggressive. It's more in some ways mainstream, right? With the angle, like the anger and some of the themes coming in. And I just thought it was interesting because you know, and maybe this is why there was a reaction, because De La Soul, you know, you always think of them as being like the happy warriors and stuff
Right.
like that, and cerebral hip hop. And it's clear, like when you listen to something like this, it's like they did not like being reduced to that, you know. And that was really my takeaway, that they're like, we're here to remind you that we also have this other side to us, and we can really rap, and we have credibility, and we come from a, you know, lineage that isn't just this thing that has been slapped on us. And I mean, they explicitly tell you it in the skits too. I mean, the skits are basically, I mean, the skits, if you take them as like what the skits are, they're not appeal, but the skits are a narrative.
It's like
And
a frame story kind of.
yeah, exactly. And the first time around, I wasn't picking it up until a little bit later in it. I'm like, oh, okay, they're starting to give you the basically the liner notes, so to speak, of this
Yep.
album. And then yeah, when you listen to it a second time, knowing that, you're like, oh yeah, they're clearly telling you thematically what this album's about. And then when you put them all together, you're like, ah, okay, got the central theme of what they're going for here, which only underscores the lyrics and you know, the theme of it and stuff. And it works for me. I actually kind of like both juxtapositions of the group. They're wildly talented MCs with three different styles we talked about before. Their sample selection, once again, is choice, but different, which I appreciated. It's still eclectic, but it is, Matt said focused. I think the focus is more that they are clearly not just picking samples for how they sound. They're picking samples for tone and mood and source material
Yep.
as well. If you dig backwards, like I did a little bit of what the songs are they're picking, you'll see that even the songs they're picking thematically are similar to what they're going for here. So yeah, definite thumbs up for this album. But if you are a person that is expecting, like I think a lot of critics were and listeners were, a redux of their second album, they're not giving that to you.
Yeah.
There's enough here that you still probably would like it, but it's a very different album in many other ways too.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm with you guys. I really like this album as well. It is a departure, but it's more like when you reframe it as just them like showing a different side of themselves and not expecting more of the first album, then I think it's just as rewarding. It's a complex album in some regards. You know, there's a lot to unpack. It takes a while. It took me a while to kind of get into it, and I didn't really respond to it in the first listen the way I did the first album. I was like, what's going on here? I don't know, it didn't cohere with me. I think I liked the lighter tone of the first album a bit more at first. And again, I don't like the skits. I don't think it works sonically nearly ever then, but I kind of understand what they were going for. The interludes, you know, they structure their songs so interestingly. They often have, you know, interludes within the songs. That's kind of what Matt was saying about the prog element, or they have like spoken word segments and you think it's on a different song, but it's still the same song. And
Can I ask you something, Josh? I know
Yeah.
you don't like skits, but a lot of times skits are played for humor or realness and stuff
Yes.
like that. Did it work for you in the context of clearly, and you seem to have picked up on it too, clearly these were sort of like outbursts a little bit at like people that annoy them,
Yeah.
responding to how they think we're going to hear this album, and then the fact that they did hear it that way was there. So the skits largely existed. Did that at all work more for you, or no?
No,
Because I don't think
yeah.
this album could exist without those skits, because I think pulled together they're almost a song in their own right.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like put your feelings in the songs, and the skits.
Okay.
They're not. Well, I don't find them funny. I find them annoying. At least on this album.
Do you think they were playing for humor on I don't think they were playing for humor. I think
Yeah,
they were.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's a stretch to say that this album couldn't exist without those skits. I mean, I see what you're saying. Like for me, like as the non-lyrics person, like I was struggling to figure out exactly what was going on with the skits because they were short and sometimes it was hard to hear what they were saying in the background. But like musically, like no, the skit you're making it sound like the skits make the album.
No, you're no. But I think you choose to call an album "De La Soul is Dead" on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like you could have called it anything else, but when you make a conscious decision to do the art they did and call your album "De La Soul is Dead" and write lyrics like this, I think they kind of were almost like, if you don't get it, the skits let you know. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
I
mean?
guess.
In case you were missing it, like here's like
I guess it seems redundant to me then. Like I feel like
Okay.
I got the feeling of it through the songs and kind of the nature, the topics of some of the songs. I mean, like,
But don't you get the feeling they were saying we think a lot of people are not going to get it because they're not listening to? We don't get a feeling they're listening to as much of our lyrics as we want, and like
Well,
they'll
I
just say these aren't songs I like the first one. So
Yeah,
and fuck
I
you
guess
if you
so.
feel that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's those people are dumb then, I guess. Like, I don't know. I feel like you can kind of get, even without like paying attention to the lyrics, you kind of get thematically or sonically a different tone than the first album. But I don't know. They're making their point, and I guess I didn't need them to make their point, but that's me listening in retrospect. I don't know what it was like when the album came out. The sampling is great. I love how organically they play off each other when they're rapping and kind of transition from one to the other in the songs. A song like Ring Ring Ring, Hey 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 feels, or Ha Ha Hey, is like an example of kind of this cynicism and their unhappiness, with all these people coming up to them trying to give them demos and like get them get them into the industry or help them out. I feel like that's kind of what I picked up on in terms of their unhappiness. And the skits are kind of superfluous as a result. Millie pulled a pistol on Santa. You guys didn't really talk about this song. It's about an abused girl whose father plays Santa, and who she then a sexually abused girl who then like kills him with a gun. And it's like super dark. And it's, when you listen to those lyrics, it's very apparent as well, the change in tone from the first album. And My Brother's a Basshead is another example of talking about drug use and it's not as funny as the first, or lighthearted as the first album. But then they also have a roller skating jam named Saturdays, which has this great upbeat feel. And
Do you know what roller skating jam is, the origin behind that song? I
No.
think that would help. So the origin was the record company said they needed something playable like their first album.
Oh,
so they
okay.
wrote what they considered to be a complete nonsense song that
Yeah.
would meet the quota of it. So basically that's a song they feel, it's a great song, but they feel it's like a song about absolutely nothing. That it's in its own way.
Cynical,
That's why
yeah.
they gave it such a name
Yes.
that doesn't mean anything,
Right.
because it's so, in many ways it's thematically fits perfect on the
Yes.
album, because it's so that's what happened with that one.
And Kicked Out of the House, I thought that song was hilarious. I mean, they say right up front, we don't mean to offend any electronic music, but this is what we think it would be. And just them kind of repeating these samples and saying, put it on vibrate. And I just started laughing at one point listening to that song. So I feel like this album is well worth a listen, and it reveals itself the more you listen to it. I think, as we've said, we've all kind of gotten different things out of it and pulled different things from different parts of the album. And so I think it's great in a different way than the first album. I'd like it a little less than the first album, but I still think they're almost experimental. They're pushing the envelope in a lot of ways in hip hop on this album. And yeah.
I like this album a little bit better, and I think I might have heard this a little bit different than you guys, because to me, what was a spiritual predecessor to this was like Frank Zappa. Remember when he made that album where it was sort of like interludes and sketches, and it was supposed to be sort of like
We're only in it for the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're on it for the money, and it was his sort of take on the industry and society, and I think I said in that album, it almost was like a movie kind of with the
Yeah.
theme, and there were these different pieces, and normally some of the stuff he'd done might have annoyed me, but when I understood that it was sort of like a art project as much as an album, like it really made me appreciate it more, and that's what this album reminded me of. I felt like this was part music, part thing, but part social statement too. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to realize, like, coming out in 1991, like what the system was that it was going into, right? Like in De La Soul, I think kind of wanted to be looked at as serious hip hop because
Yeah.
yes, some of their heroes were the eccentric or the party, but also their heroes were like New York MCs and Public Enemy and stuff. And that's what this album feels like to me. Like we're
okay.
pissed we're not taken seriously
Yeah.
like that, and we're pissed that we're not thought of as like, you know what I mean? Like in our own way tough, in our own way male, in our own way, you know, sexual, you know, like all the
Right.
stuff, you know, instead we're just these like sort of like feel good sort of you know, things. And so that was really how I processed this album as a theme album kind of.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can understand
And
that
so you said,
wanting
are the skits essential for that? Yes, for me they were, because it's not them as a thing. It's more, you know, they wrote a song that was different, that you guys both said, this song's different. I like it, but it's unusual. And like the whole sketch after it is, man, that song sucks. It's not what they do. I'm not gonna, they basically like gave the commentary right afterwards of what they thought clearly a lot of
would
people were
think.
going to think. So
Yeah.
I did find
It's
that
just-
pretty funny because
it's
there's a
just so
self-awareness to it.
It's just so interesting because yes, like to all of what you're saying, but at the same time, man, I'm not when I listen to music, I'm not looking for themes. I'm not pulling apart stories and stuff like that. I'm here for the music mostly, and I realize I am totally putting myself at a, you know, that there's a lot that I'm missing, and I might get more out of it, but it's just, especially with something that I have zero background in or knowledge about, it's just, I wasn't really picking up on many of that stuff at all, to be quite honest. I was just
But you
engaged in the
enjoyed it,
music.
though.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and so here's my question. Like, he clearly was sort of going after that take, right? Like on the sketches, but he would just assume that you wouldn't like it if you had
No,
that
I thought the
take.
music
But
was great. I
yeah,
thought
but the
production
irony
of-
is
yeah.
he said that, you know, the complaints you had, like, man, I don't want to hear this. These songs aren't as good as the other songs, but you didn't have that reaction. You still
No.
like the songs, but you also had the general theme that he was sort of pushing up against, shall we say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I picked. I mean, like I said, I didn't come full hard like, wow, this is way dark. I'm like, no, it seems a little darker to me than, you know. But like, I just, it wasn't really something that I was focused on. I was just like, I listened to the album twice. Like I said, it's a lot. It's an hour and 13 minutes, and yeah,
It's definitely
20
a time commitment.
So
yeah.
it's a lot to get through, and it's hard to kind of be like. And I didn't realize. I'm like, shit, it's 27 tracks. I didn't even realize that listening to it. But it's just like one great, like musically and beat wise and production and samples. Like there weren't many songs on here that I didn't like enjoy.
Yeah.
So so I very much enjoyed it for that. And then if I went back to listen again, I'm sure I would get more out of it, certainly, you know, with more of a background in it. So
Yeah, I think I think both of you are just proving my point that you can get out a lot out of it, and also kind of the whole point of our podcast is like the album as a concept and like how it can work, you know, as a total, and like what it's saying totally versus like the individual songs. So, yeah, I think we're all in agreement though that it's good.
Yeah.
and that we like it. So.
Well, and I'll end with one last thing. I remember one time a friend of mine out of the clear blue when we were in New York City one day said to me, "What a beautiful day in the concrete jungle. I think I'll go down to Calliope and just be a fucking dickhead," which always makes me laugh from Who Do You Worship. So when that came on, I started laughing because it reminded me of a friend of mine who said that when we were in the city
funny.
one time. So yeah, who's a big De La Soul fan. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. All right.